This is Mission Control Houston. Welcome to the International Space Station Flight Control Room. Again, that was a video replay from a downlink earlier yesterday from the Commander Dan Burbank. And here with us today, we have our very special guest, astronaut Mike Fossum. Welcome, Mike.
Hey, it's great to be back, Amico.
Good. And so, Mike is a veteran of 3 space flights. The most recent flight was aboard the International Space Station. He was the commander of Expedition 29. He was actually up there and handed over. As you heard in the video, Dan talked about a little bit about that handover. And so, Mike was actually there when Dan arrived and had a very quick handover.
I was one of the guys handing over to him. It was great. This video was great. I really loved it because it's such a great description from Dan about what it's like to live up there, to come aboard, and to have a very quick handover. Like you said, we really only had about 4 days to pass over as much as we could and show him how things worked and where we had hidden things, and get ready ourselves to leave. And so it's great to see in the video and his whole description of what it's like to live and work up there for a long period of time, and kind of looking back now as he's nearing the last few weeks and getting ready to come home.
Great. So he is now just a little more than a week, and you were there about a week when he did arrive. So talk to me a little about that last week. I mean, you obviously had a little more crew prep because you had handover activities as well, but talk to me about some of your thoughts and whatnot before you
Well,
left.
what's going on right now is really, and I've talked to Dan. I talked to him twice last weekend. They're getting ready to come home. He's starting to pack things up, and putting those the last few things that he really wanted to do. They're at the very top of his own personal to-do list. He's trying to get a couple of those things done, and I know that he's spending a little extra time with Don and Andre to say, okay, let's make sure we really, that you guys really know everything that you need to know. And of course they do. They've been there since December also, so they're ready. They'll be a little bit nervous, though, knowing, how I felt even after spending months up there as I was taken over from Ron Guerin. But part of it's just getting your things. You don't have a lot of stuff, but you really owe it to the people that are following behind you to take care of your stuff, to get
Sure.
things packed up, and to get a lot of it actually thrown away, because we don't have a way to return clothes or even wash them. So things like clothes are actually thrown away when you're done with them. And so those are packed. I'm sure a lot of them are packed on that Progress vehicle that's leaving tomorrow morning.
That's right.
They have that thing packed full of trash right to the point of just barely being able to operate the hatch. I know how that stuff works.
Speaking of, they just closed those hatches and they're performing the leak checks now.
Yeah,
We'll,
that's
we'll
right.
get into some of that in a little bit. So let's talk about some of these activities that are taking place on the International Space Station. I think the last time you and I talked, there was a lot going on. It seems like there's a lot going on
There's always
today.
a lot going on.
That's what I'm beginning to understand here.
Right.
So first of all, Commander Burbank is working on a remove and replacement of the hydrogen sensor, and this is of the oxygen generator system.
Right.
Can you talk to me a little about that?
Well, yeah, this system takes water and then through a hydrolysis, um, it splits the water into hydrogen and oxygen, and we have to make sure that those stay separated. And there's a hydrogen sensor in there that needs to be replaced periodically. And it's kind of a fussy procedure with a lot of odd things that we don't use very often. Something that I'm excited about today is that the ground has prepared a training video, which is actually inserted right into the beginning of his procedures to open up a little 5-minute video as refresher training. And I think this is going to be really, really valuable. It's going to help us be more efficient on orbit, to have just this little video thing similar to today. If you've got to do some work on a car or a piece of something around the house, if you do a quick internet search, you can find videos on how to do things that you've never even been trained on doing. But you can watch a video, see somebody else doing it, then the written procedure makes sense, then you can figure it out. And so that's kind of what we're evaluating today, is Dan's ability to do this little maintenance activity with training that he had a year or maybe more ago, but precede the activity with just a few minutes of video to review it. And I can't wait to hear his commentary on that. I watched the video myself yesterday. I did this procedure also on orbit while I was there.
So did you find it
And
useful?
I think the video is going to be great. I can't wait to hear what the crew has to say about it.
That's a great idea, and I can't imagine that wouldn't be useful to them.
Oh,
So
it's
it'd
great.
be good to hear from that. And I know they have about 3.5 hours scheduled of work time to do that. So it does sound like tedious
Oh, I
work.
bet Dan's done in 2.5.
So, and other things that are going on, pretty exciting stuff. Pettit and Kuipers are actually working on a onboard training session with the mainly a practice session with the robotic arm. They're working with Canada Arm 2 to grapple the Dragon, SpaceX's Dragon, that's set to launch on April 30th. Talk to me some about
Oh
that.
yeah, this is exciting. Getting ready for that for the Dragon grapple, and this is a change in crew responsibilities because they were planning to catch the space exploration cargo vehicle, which is named the Dragon, was supposed to arrive a little bit ago. It's been delayed some, and so Don Pettit will be the prime arm operator for that. We call it a grab, just in a way of talking about it. But what happens here is that Dragon vehicle will fly up and hover right in formation, right underneath the space station, just 10 meters out. This is really a cool. It's a very complicated maneuver.
Sure.
This is a new ship, and so this is the first of a kind. And we can do a lot of simulations and a lot of training on a lot of things, but it really boils down to the ability of that Dragon vehicle to maintain a very steady position. And then Don, with Andre's assistance, will be using the SSRMS, the big space station arm built in Canada, to reach out and grab the grapple fixture, a little pin that's on that the spacecraft and then they will, once they get it on the arm, then they'll be able to maneuver it and install it. So what they're doing today is actually flying the big arm, manual flying, and this is great stuff because it's real flying. And there's a target on the side of the space station, and they're setting the arm up so it's not directly over that target. It's at an offset, so the crew has to manually fly the arm to get it centered up and then fly in over the pin, and that's exactly the kind of maneuver they'll be doing on about May 2nd or so, when the Dragon vehicle is up there ready for the grab.
Sure. And I understand this is the third time for the station arm to be used to actually grapple a free-flying spacecraft. So that's pretty exciting as well. And I understand now the mission itself of Dragon. Can you talk to me about that? Is basically to see, to test whether we can fly commercial spacecraft up to the International Space Station. So this is a big test for us.
Yeah, the first two free flyers were Japanese HTV vehicles, and Nicole Stott and Katie Coleman were the prime arm operators for those two grabs. And so this is the third vehicle, but it is a different. It's the third time we do this kind of operation, but it is a different vehicle, and so everybody looks forward to just seeing how it performs as it gets in close.
Right.
And this is also the first of the U.S. built commercial cargo vehicles, which were built specifically to bring cargo up to the space station by a U.S. carrier. That's the first time we have that. We have the Russian Progress, the Japanese HTV, and the European ATV, which we have the third of the ATV vehicles is docked to the station right now. So this is now the next U.S. capability, the SpaceX Dragon, and hopefully followed soon by the orbital Cygnus in a few months also.
So talk to me a little about
supplies,
the importance.
Food, clothing, medical equipment, new experiments, those kind of things. I don't have the numbers on the tip of my tongue, but it's over 1,000 pounds of equipment that's coming up in the on the Dragon.
Oh, that's great. Well, and so it is important. So that's what I was going to ask you, is just to describe the importance of that, and obviously
it's
very important.
We have different ways of getting cargo up there, but we need to get this next capability online, and it's been a real challenge for the private companies that have been very anxious to get into this business, and with NASA's support and encouragement and financial incentives, these companies are coming into the business, into the game, and they're ready. That we've had the flight readiness reviews earlier this week, and it's it's exciting times as we're moving forward to this.
Great. Well, we're all excited and looking forward to that. So also, while we're talking about the coming of a vehicle, let's talk about the going of a vehicle. So we also have a spacecraft, Progress 46P. You mentioned earlier, filled up with trash till it's about to buckle. They have closed the hatches, and they are performing the leak checks, and that is to performing the leak checks is Shkaplerov and Kononenko, and explain a little about what they are doing, those final closeout activities?
Well, first of all, you need to pack the thing up, and when you're doing that, also maintaining the proper distribution of the stuff in it, or the mass to or the center of gravity, because it needs to fly as a free-flying vehicle. It doesn't land, but it needs to fly safely, and so it needs to be packed so that the control system knows how to handle it. Um, when we bring the supplies up to space, everybody thinks in terms of getting all of this food up there, and experiments and clothes and other things that you use. You have to get rid of those things too.
Yeah.
And indeed, I mean, our storage, our ability to store more stuff on the space station is limited, because you reach the point, it's kind of like that garage that's overpacked and multi-layers deep, so you can't find the thing you're looking for when it's time to go find that spare part to do a repair or do some work, or even find the food containers that you're supposed to be opening up next. And so we have to get rid of stuff. And the different vehicles that are going home now, like the Progress, we say going home, of course, it just burns up.
Right.
But as well as human waste and other things that are all packed in there.
Okay.
So it's ready to go, and the crew really likes packing those things up, because that means you're opening up some free space on board.
For more to come on board.
And so that's the packing part. The other
Mhm.
part they're doing right now is making sure when that vehicle leaves, right now it's attached to a docking port on the station that has a hatch, and they're closing the hatch on the cargo ship as well as the hatch on the station side, because when the vehicle leaves, that hatch and the seals on that hatch are now what's keeping the air in the station. And so we do very carefully do these checks on that interface to make sure that the hatch on the station side is solid and not leaking.
Sure. So
Because that'll be
important.
exposed to space until the next cargo ship comes to dock in that location.
Yes. So very important work that they're
Oh, yeah.
working on. So it sounds like we just have nothing but important work up there. So let's talk now about, there's also today, Shkaplerov and Ivanishин are working, while Burbank continues to work on that hydrogen sensor, they are going to be doing some crew um, departure prep work. And you talked a little about that, but let's talk about something that you did not talk about, and that was the Centaur fit check. That is um, the anti-G suit,
Yeah.
and I think Evanishan is going to be doing a fit check of that suit today. And talk to me a little about what
You
that is.
bet. Well, in addition to getting your personal stuff taken care of, and part of it is making sure you're ready to ride in the Soyuz spaceship again. And the anti-G suit that we have for high performance jet flying and stuff here, we wear what we just call the G suit, and it's kind of like leggings or pants that have air bladders inside of them, and that's hooked into the jet. So when you're pulling G's, that inflates to help keep the blood from pooling in your legs and causing you to lose consciousness. We don't use a similar system. We don't use a system with air inflation for this Russian spacesuit. We use something that actually uses elastic. They call it the cantaver, and you pull it on, and it's very tight. It squeezes particularly the legs and the leg muscle areas to keep to keep those blood vessels from dilating. And after we land and you try to stand up to climb out of the ship, after your body systems right now are working to keep the blood from pooling in the lower parts of our bodies, and there's a system of different check valves in the veins in the legs and things like that help that, as well as just muscle tone. In space, those systems get lazy, and so you need to make sure that you give a little extra support. It's kind of like a support hose, actually, or something you might use for somebody that has varicose veins to help to squeeze on the extremities, the ankles, lower legs, to keep those veins from expanding. So what they're doing today is a full check of the full system for the guys, putting on that anti-G kind of elastic G suit, as well as then the space suit, and maybe even getting into the seats and making sure that everything fits. And that's it's a part of getting kind of ready to get in change modes, because they've been they've been a space station crew. They've been living up there for 5.5 months.
Sure.
and they've been taking care of the space station and doing science experiments. And it's time to start changing their way of thinking. It's time to start. They're going to be coming home in another spaceship. They have not spent much time in the Soyuz practicing those procedures that we spend so much time before launch practicing
Sure.
and drilling and being evaluated. And so now it's part of the whole every day doing a little bit of that kind of work to prepare for the ride home.
Sure. And what a ride it is.
Oh, what a ride it is.
And so that crew that is practicing or preparing for their departure is Commander Burbank and Anton Shkaplerov and Anatoly Ivanishin, and they are set to depart from the station on April 27th.
Right.
Oh, yes. And also, thank you for that correction on the suits. Kentaur. I said
Kentaur.
Centaur. You
That's
know,
how.
I'm working on my Russian, and it's not there yet. So let's go ahead and ask some questions. We have polled Twitter, and we got some questions from the public, and we have a few questions. So thank you very much for sending those to us. First, we'll ask this. The first question comes from Katie Huth Jones. My question: did you see something spectacular from the cupola that you were unable to capture with your camera? First, let's talk about what the cupola is, and then we can answer that question.
Well, first I want to say hi to Katie. She's a very old friend, and yours was the first question that popped up. So this will be fun, and I'm glad to answer your question. The cupola is the little cluster of windows that's on the bottom of the station, and it is spectacular. It is such an amazing part of the station. The other windows that we have are pretty much, you know, flush with the outer walls, and most of them point down toward the Earth, which is really cool, but you don't get a good chance to see the horizon. And with this little cluster of windows, there's one large one that looks down, but there's 6 that look around the sides too, so you can see the horizon. And for me, I love to try to capture these views, and the low light photography of the aurora and city lights and stuff were a real challenge, and I enjoyed doing that. Something that I kept trying to get, and I could never get it right, was to really try to capture the sunrise, because it was just so cool as you're coming across at night and seeing the cities rolling by down below, occasionally shooting stars down below, to see the light as it starts to grow on the horizon as you're coming toward the sunrise, and that light spreads, you know, across your view, across the horizon, and you get the layers of the atmosphere as the light's kind of bending through, and you can see these layers and the colors that grow and grow. And you know, it's just a really cool thing, and I couldn't capture that with the cameras because the extreme lighting was just too much for it, and so I couldn't get the really good bands of color in the atmosphere, as well as kind of the purples of the Earth and as it's starting to be illuminated down below.
It sounds like a very brilliant scene to see, and despite the fact that how many sunrises do you come across?
16 a day.
And how many
You
days?
have a lot of
167 days you're on
you have a lot
station.
of opportunities, but just hard to capture that kind of thing. It can be done though, and if the guys up there, Dan Burbank and Don Pettit and Andre too, have been working hard at catching some of those things. So there's some really nice shots up there.
Okay, sounds like you need another trip.
Oh, maybe so.
Okay, well, speaking of the brilliance
Yeah.
of some of the sites aboard ISS, the second question on Twitter comes to us from Seb. Do you see the city lights as bright as they are shown on the ISS night time-lapse videos?
You do. The city lights really show up like that. I loved, actually, I had 2 pairs of binoculars in the cupola because you could see the city lights, and it was really cool. And I discovered just with binoculars with a little bit of magnification like that, you can see so many details that really jump out because you have the dark countryside, and then you see these lights, and you can you know, literally see individual cars on roads out there as you realize what you're looking at is the little beam of headlights or streams of cars, um, so cities, and to see the bridges, to see the rivers that come through the city with the bridges across them, all those things really jump out, and just amazing to see.
Well, that was a great question because I know that you sent us a lot of those videos. So we had a lot of those time-lapse videos, and to me personally, it looks sort of like glitter. You know, it's got
I
that
loved
beautiful
doing
golden.
that because you look at these things and you say, how can I describe this? I'm an engineer. You
Sure.
know, I don't have the words to describe what this looks like, and I don't have to now. You can see it. You can see it as we see it, and it's sped up when we take those individual photos and string them together to make a video. We're moving faster in the video than we're really moving, but you can see it and get that same feeling we have.
Sure. And so thank you to the public for those questions. We have one final question here. Um, I'm curious as well.
Okay.
So this comes from Otto Chen. Hi, Mike. One question that concerns me: how does it smell in the ISS? Thank you for answering.
It is a unique smell, and you don't notice it after you've been there, but when you first get there, you definitely notice it. And interestingly, I was able to bring home a shirt. Was able to bring home in my allotment of personal things I could bring back. It came back in a plastic wrap, and and when I opened that back up, it had nobody else had opened it, and there's the smell of space station. To me, it smells like a combination of kind of exotic foods and spices in a locker room.
Hmm. That's
Sorry.
interesting and a good description.
Well, you're living and working up there for a period of time, and so
I can imagine. So
that's
there's also a gym aboard.
there
So
is
you
a
got
gym
that
aboard which you're using almost
sweat.
every day. That's exactly right.
Yay. So so let's get back to space station. I think let's see if we can get some video
Okay.
that's coming down to us now. The other one of the other activities that is taking place right now is Don Pettit is working with Robonaut, and you spent some time with Robonaut.
Oh, you bet.
So he spent some time assembling and putting Robonaut together, and we're getting a live view right now
Okay.
that is aboard this space
Well,
station.
today is like a hand dexterity exercise is a part of what's going on. Robonaut's a really cool experiment, the first humanoid robot, in space, and so it's really fascinating. Now, I will tell you, he has freaky long arms. When he stretches out like that, to see his arm, he's a wingspan. His arms are, I'm guessing, 20% longer than normal. If for a humanoid torso and head that size, these arms are really long, and the fingers are extra long too. But it's really fascinating to see, him actually the kind of coordination that does exist, and there's force sensors built into his hand, which allows him to actually reach out and take your hand and shake it without crushing
And
it,
it's a
because
pretty
he has the
firm,
strength to
good
crush it.
handshake,
Oh,
correct?
you bet it is.
And so, are you ever intimidated by the handshake? Because you did do a handshake on station.
We didn't get the handshake. We didn't.
Oh no, that's
They,
right.
yeah,
It was cut short.
it was cut short a little bit. They were still. I mean, they were learning, and that's why we're
Sure.
flying them. The only time I was surprised was there was some motion that was it was a bigger motion than I was expecting, and I hadn't cleared enough room for this big guy to start sweeping his arms around. So fortunately it startled me a little bit. Everything was fine, but before we let him out to play anymore, we made sure we cleaned up all the computers and cables and things that might be within his field of reach.
Right. Well, aside from fun, Robonaut I know has some very important tasks, and it is up there for a specific reason. You want to talk to us a
Well,
little about that?
right now we're there. We have found there are a lot of things to learn about how the robot actually moves and works in the zero-G environment. It actually was kind of unexpected, because as in the initial build-up, as we're learning how to do these kind of things, he was, the plan was for him to do uh, pre-planned kinds of activities and stuff that had been done on the ground, but we find that the dynamics of the motion in zero gravity, the joints and stuff don't have the same kind of resistance or drag, and so there's like, I think of it as like a bouncing. When he goes to move his arm, there would be a little bit of a bounce to it because gravity wasn't, kind of dampening out or holding the arm down, and that caused it to trip. And so we learned about the dynamics of the motion and controlling that motion. And so they've been reprogramming and tweaking and refining, those models to make him work a little bit better. And so it's been a learning process. It's been wonderful. The things you cannot learn, on the ground. That they kind of expected these things to go ripping right through those kind of checks and on to bigger and better things. But hey, that's why you do this kind of testing. And
Exactly.
so, and it's a build-up approach to go through
Mhm.
those kind of things, to learn the control, and then to work our way into doing things like a few weeks ago, he did the first what you would call useful work, where he's moving a velocity detector in front of an air vent, and that's something we do. The crew does periodically, and it's to measure when you get a buildup of dust in the ventilation system
Mhm.
that starts to actually degrade the ventilation, and so you monitor the airflow out of these vents, and at a certain point, it's time to go in and clean things up
Mhm.
again. It's tedious. It's hard to do it repeatedly in exactly the same place.
Mhm.
Well, robots are good at that kind of thing. They can get it back in the same place that he did it last time. He could do it every time. So you get a better measure
Sure.
of that, and so you'll be able to do better trend tracking.
And it also doesn't take crew time.
And it
If
doesn't take crew time, and that's the eventual goal, is to have things like this that can help us out.
Great. Well, thank
You
you
bet.
so much for that. So we have just a little bit of time. Well, let's talk real quickly
Okay.
about earlier this morning. I'm sorry, Commander Burbank had actually done some quality water testing, and
Right.
the reason why I want to bring this up is that Earth Day is right around the corner. It's on Sunday, April the 22nd, and so I wanted to talk a little about the water quality testing, but also more importantly the water reclamation system. If
Right.
you can just talk a little about that.
Well, the because of the logistics or the difficulty of launching water to space, because it weighs, 1 kilogram per liter, no matter what you do, you can't freeze dry it or anything else.
Sure.
And so we've got to reuse as much water as possible on the station, and that means reclaiming the condensation out of the air conditioning system. That's reclaiming the water that we exhale, we breathe out, or we sweat out. When we have those sweaty gym clothes, we let them dry out, and we collect the water back in the through the air conditioning system, put it into the purifier. We also we reclaim part of the water out of the urine that we collect. It goes into a system that helps evaporate out part of that water. We don't get all of it, but we get about half of it, and then that has to go through a whole purification system. So you're getting condensation that's dripping out, a lot of airflow, picking up things from the atmosphere. Obviously, the contaminants associated with cleaning urine back into drinking water
Sure.
are very clear, and so we monitor this kind of stuff, and the systems that we have to do that they've come up with are actually being used now in disaster situations, where you can take water not as maybe not as dirty as actually pouring urine in one end, but taking stream water or other water sources that are known not to be safe or suspect, and putting them through the same kind of filter systems that
Mhm.
we're using on the space station, that we've developed for the space station,
Mhm.
and that's immediately providing water in disaster situations,
Yeah.
which is a great way to bring some of that technology back to Earth.
Well, that's fascinating. And they say ingenuity is the mother of all invention. So, necessity, I'm sorry, is the mother
You
of all
bet.
invention. So, and it's interesting that we do have some takeaways, on some of the knowledge that we're transferring from space station here back on Earth.
You bet.
And so I think we're running just a little bit close to
Okay.
quitting time. And so first, I just want to mention that the progress Undocking is again scheduled to take place at 6:04 a.m. Central Time. We'll have that televised here
Hmm.
live on NASA television, and that coverage will begin at 5:45 a.m. Again, thanks so much for coming out and talking with us today. It's always a pleasure.
It's great being here, Miko. I look forward to getting up early in the morning to watch that progress undock.